All right, I hate long intros and no one wants to see me sitting in front of this thing talking about Landcruiser philosophy. So here is repacking a front right wheel bearing. I just felt that it was loose. You can see it's actually pretty bad. It's right now it's jacked up in the air. There's obvious play. So what I've done so far is with it on the ground, broke the lug nuts loose. Now I have it jacked up and I'm gonna undo those bolts and get the wheel off. Wheels off. Next, I'm going to take the brake caliper off. You don't want it to hang down and have all the weight be on the rubber line. So take it off and either tuck it up, rest it somewhere in here if you can, or get a bungee cord or some kind of strap with a hook and hang it from a control arm. That way the weight's not on the rubber line. To take it off, there should be two 17mm bolts, one at the top here where I have the socket, and then directly below that you can see there's another 17mm right here. What I'm doing for these bolts that are difficult to get up is I have my little smaller ratchet here, get it on the bolt, arm on it, get my leg underneath my arm, and then my other hand on top of my wrist. That way I'm pushing up with my leg, lifting with my left arm, and pulling with my right arm. And usually the combination of those three, just like that, is enough to get you get these bolts off. So there we go, point of leverage, and that's how you break them loose. All right, just like that, brake caliper around the upper control arm with a bungee cord, slack in the line, and then extra bolts. Just, you know, thread them back with where they came from. That way everything's in its right spot. Next thing you're gonna do is take off this little dust cap. Use a flathead, one that's got a pretty low profile if you have it. This one's just worn out, or maybe I ground it down at some point, but for whatever reason, it works as a little pry bar. Just work it in there in that little seam, do what you can, and then smack the back of it with a hammer. For this kind of thing, use your brass hammer that you have laying around. These things are really cheap at Harbor Freight or wherever. Just gentle taps all around with the tip of the screwdriver in that little seam, and it should start working off for you. All right, next step, we got 6 of these little 14mm bolts that rest right here. Loosen them, unthread them a little bit, but don't take them all the way off. All right, backed them off just to about this far. I also hit them with some brake cleaner. Make sure you inhale a little bit of that, get it all over your tools just to get your money's worth, make a big mess. But once you have these mostly unscrewed, you'll notice there's these little cone washers. You got the nut, you got a little pressure washer, and then below that, that little guy there, cone washer, holding in this thing, whatever it is. The brass hammer is going to let us knock that loose. I still have this snap ring in place I'm looking at right now, so I'm actually gonna make sure I pop that off first. All right, snap rings off. You can use needle, like a pair of needle nose, and sort of pry them apart with both hands. I have a little cheap pair of snap ring pliers, did the job, so that freed up. Now we'll see how this goes. I'm just gonna do this little bonk with my brass hammer. It's not gonna damage anything. That metal's softer than whatever this stuff is, but make sure you're not actually hitting the bolts. Keep working around, and eventually these will start to loosen up for you. All right, I just kept smacking it, hit at the top, sides, a little bit right here, and then finally over here on the left side. You kind of got to get after it. Obviously, you're not wailing on it. You don't want to accidentally hit one of these bolts and bend them, but if you get some good, if you get a little aggressive with it and keep going at it, you'll see that you break this little seal right here. There you go. And once that's done, you can take off all these nuts and washers and make sure you put them somewhere you're not going to lose them, because they like to roll away. Normally this little faceplate here, hub thing, slides right off. Mine is being a little bit stubborn. It was getting caught on these last splines here. I just very gently put my screw flathead in there because I had a little bit of a gap here. I went in circles, kind of tapped it in, wiggled it around, and that popped it free for me. Also, check this out. This is my first look at it. This is the lock nut. I don't know the names of these parts. I just know how to work on them, but it's like hand tight, barely on there. So we need to get that off. First way to do it is to get off this little metal washer that has little ears on it that stick out. It looks like this one's folded forward here, and then maybe another one somewhere, but the main point is get a little flathead in there, pry it back, tap it with a hammer, and you want this one to be folded back so it's sticking straight up and down like these, and that'll free up the nut so you can unscrew it. And then behind that is another nut. Just unthread that, get it out of your way. And once this is out, I'm fairly certain we will be able to pull on this whole hub assembly, pull it straight out towards us, and take it off of the axle. Okay, sure enough, I had both hands on it, pulled it straight out. This is where we're gonna wanna keep things clean. And on a side note, this is a good chance to inspect this shaft. All right, I've got my little workspace here, pretty state of the art. What you're gonna wanna do is, right now, I'm just trying to get this old grease out. Really just like, I mean, you're wearing gloves, you should be. Just get in there, just scoop it out. And while I'm doing this, I'm just looking for like little metal shavings and stuff. And again, I want to clarify, I'm not doing a whole wheel bearing job right now. I'm just doing like a quick and dirty repack because I had so much play in my tire. So obviously, if I see something really concerning, it's going to be a hard stop. And I'm going to realize, okay, I should probably do the whole job. But I don't want to do that right now. Once I have most of it out, I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to wipe it down some with a rag. And what this is going to let me do is when I get a flashlight, this is the bearing in the back. I'll turn it over and show you better in just a moment. But I'm trying to get a good look at that and do the same inspection that I did for the outer wheel bearing, the one that sits right here. So now we're looking at the back side of the hub, and this is the inner wheel bearing. So, you know, in here, in theory, this would be like where your CV axle and everything goes in your control arms. And this is the back side of the inner wheel bearing. They face in towards each other. So this one comes in from the front like this. The inner wheel bearing, I believe, is a little bit bigger, but it's the same concept. I tried to find one of these wheel seals for sale near me. They were out of stock. The only reason being I wanted to pop it out and just get a better look at this bearing. But you can tell a lot just by looking at it. It has a race that it sits in that's kind of cupped like this, and the cone shape sits in it. So what I can do is you just, you know, it's going to get freaky, but just put your hand in there, put some pressure on it, and spin it. And what I'm feeling for is any kind of binding, any kind of grinding, anything that might tell me there's, again, fragmented metal in there or something not moving smoothly. And to me, it feels pretty good. So now I'm going to repack this first outer wheel bearing now that I'm satisfied with it. Again, I got it, you know, reasonably clean. There's still some old grease in there, but I just sort of ran it around with a towel in my hand, and I'll push out some of that old grease with the new grease. Tons of videos of this on YouTube. This is nothing new, but the way that I've always packed grease is put it in your palm, get grease in your palm right there, and then you're gonna grab the bearing, and that open end on the end, you're gonna take little bites out of the grease you have in your palm. And you're going to do that until you see it start to come out of the top of the bearing there. So I'm just going to do just that. Not a whole lot. It gets messy really quick doing this. But just get on the palm. I have it here. And I'm just going to start with one, you know, quarter of the bearing and just start taking little bites. You can see at the top of this one here, and that little, this is there's a corner where I haven't done it right here, and then right here is where it has. It's just applying pressure, forcing grease up into that to the point where when you push it, you start to see it come out of the top. And to support it while you're doing it, it's helpful to spin the bearing and move it. And by the time you're done, you should feel confident that you've pushed most of the old grease out and new grease in and up through the tops of the bearing like I just showed. And the outer surface of the bearing will probably be mostly coated in this grease as well. And you just want to use like a good wheel bearing grease. This is like a multi-purpose, high temperature red, pretty common stuff. This is what I had laying around. Here we go. I'm happy with this. It's packed all the way around. It's a mix of probably, hopefully 75 to 90% new grease, and then some of the old stuff has been pushed out, or most of it. I didn't film it, but packing the backside of the hub and that inner bearing was pretty easy. I just got fingerfuls of grease at a time, and I would reach into the hub assembly and I would sort of scoop the grease into the back of the bearing race the same way that I did for the outer bearing that I just showed. and I was able to kind of work grease into the bearing, not as effectively as the outer one because I wasn't able to remove it from the hub, but good enough. And then at the same time, I made sure to apply a couple small handfuls of grease that I just packed into the inner hub assembly to help keep everything lubricated in the future. I have the spindle here. I put a light layer of grease on it. I'm getting ready to put the rotor and hub assembly back onto the spindle. I'm going to make sure it's seated nicely, and then I'm going to work in this little outer bearing. I'm going to do the spindle first, and it should just snug perfectly into place, just like that. Do a little rotate. Make sure we're, there we go. Nice and square. I'm going to hold it in place. Got my bearing here. And it might take a little bit of negotiating, but you should be able to just fit it just perfectly around everything else. There we go. And I'm kind of getting my thumbs in there and pushing in this bearing like this and pushing it all together. All right, I'm getting ready to put the rest of this hardware on here that we took off at the beginning. So you can see there's a little groove here in these spindle for everything to line up on. This flat one's going to go on first against the bearing. Then you're going to have the first nut, and then I also made sure to take a moment to clean out the inside threads, just so that they go on smoothly. There we go, just like that. All right, guys, this is one of the more important steps. So right now I have the preload nut, the first nut, in on top of the bearing. So right now it's the bearing, that little big flat washer I showed you, and then the first nut, which is the preload nut. There's tons of different ways to do this that you'll read about online, but really what the main takeaway from all of them is that you are almost constantly turning the hub as you tighten the preload nut. So right now you can see it is just hand tight. So what I like to do is I go hand tight, tight as I can, and then turn it. And I'm making sure that I don't hear any grinding, I don't feel anything. It feels like it's all working smoothly to me. Doesn't have any play. So what I'm going to do now is with my 54mm socket, I'm going to tighten it a little bit, spin it, tighten it a little bit more, keep spinning it. And I'm going to go, this first pass, I'm going to go a little extra snug. So I'm not going to go too crazy, but I'm going to go maybe a quarter of a turn until I start feeling some real resistance. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to spin it. And to me, which is to be expected, it's slightly more difficult to turn. But that's okay, because right now we're just setting the bearings in place. I'm going to loosen it. I'm going to back off just till it's hand tight again. So it doesn't take much. Just that quarter of a turn you saw there. Again, I'm going to spin it both directions at least 6 or 7 times. Happy with that. I'm going to tighten this again. I'm going to go just till it's snug. Maybe a little bit more, just snug. Tighten it. And then again, I'm going to go maybe just that quarter of an inch. You really don't need a lot. Or quarter of a turn. There we go. And maybe you can visualize it in there, because you have the spindle with the bearings sitting on it, and the bearings have all their moving parts, and the bearings sit up against the races, which rest inside the hub. And there's the right amount of pressure, which holds everything together securely. But if you have too much, then you end up losing the ability for all the bearings to stay lubricated and greased with all that grease that we packed in there. It just wears on them too much for it to be too tight. I personally err on the side of going a little over snug than under. So again, just one more time to show you, this is like hand tight right now. I can loosen this, go as tight as you can with your hand. Spins well, and then just one little baby oomph right there. And the way I imagine it is, when you're tightening these nuts or anything you're tightening, you get to an obvious point where it really becomes difficult. I try to find that, and then on my final pass, I go just before that. Just before that point where it really starts to feel like I'm truly making it tight. All right, next I got this little lock washer on there. It's keyed just like that right there, you can see. So it only goes on one way. You shouldn't reuse them, but I'm just gonna like a quick and dirty repack. Once that's on, you'll be able to thread on this nut. Now that this is on there, it's supposed to be torqued to about 45 foot-pounds. So just by feel with a 1/2 inch driver, that's just like pretty snug. But if you have a torque wrench, it makes life easy. All right, what you can do from here is this nut is on at about 45, 50 foot-pounds. Next you can do is you can see these ears. What I like to do is I like to fold one of them back to go over the first preload nut, and then fold one of them forward to hold the lock nut in place. It's getting dark, so I gotta use the flashlight anyway, but I'll show you what I mean. I'll get under this lip here, and I'll just sort of gently bend this little ear forward. Just like that. It's gonna keep that outer one from spinning, and then to fold the other ear backwards, it's easy. I'll choose this one because it's flush with the other nut. I'm just gonna get my flathead and tap the back of it with a hammer, and it should be no problem to fold it flat backwards. So here's the end result. One of the ears is folded forwards against this nut, and then one of the ears is folded backwards against the preload nut. And then next, what we can do is, remember this guy here, we're just gonna slide it straight onto this surface. And what is a good idea to do first is just make sure you don't have any obvious large pieces of dirt on there, because that's going to make it difficult for it to seal. So go ahead, clean off the dirt, and then put that piece back on. You might have to rotate it around a couple ways. There's, I think, only one way that it really goes on correctly, but it's easy to find. Now that this is set into place, we'll go ahead and put on all those cone washers, and then the pressure washers, and then the bolts for each of these little studs right here. Okay, so I have all the cone washers, lock washers, and nuts on. To start, what you're gonna do is just snug these down and treat it like you would a wheel. So I'm gonna go just star pattern. So across, 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 and across. And that's just to get it started. Anything where you're securing it into place with a perimeter of bolts, it's a good practice just to make sure you have an even torque on all corners. Alright, now that these are all snug, the correct torque for all of them is about 24 foot-pounds, so not too tight. Again, just stay in that crossing motion I mentioned. And then once I've gotten all of them torqued, I like to go, again, anytime I have a perimeter of bolts, I do one more pass just in a circle, just to make sure I got everything. All right, next I've got my little snap ring pliers here. Just fit it around just like that, and it should fit nicely into that groove. This is another part that you should probably not replace, but that's what I'm doing for now. What we can go ahead and do now is put our dust cap back on the end here and get ready to reinstall the brake caliper. What you should also do right now is spray the rotor and everything down with brake cleaner, because there's a good chance in doing this that you get a little bit of grease here on the rotors, and that'll pretty seriously affect your stopping power. All right, well, got the brake caliper back on. Same process as taking it off. I don't need to show you guys that. Really only tip that I have for you that you probably already know is it's always a good idea to get bolts snug while it's in the air. And then from here, what I do is I go down halfway with the jack just so that the tire is touching the ground. And then I make it tight as I want it to be. I usually just give it a good oomph with the star jack, and then I lower it down and give it one last check and call it good. But just immediate test shows that all that wheel play that I had before is gone. So drive it around a little bit, and hopefully it won't come back, or at least it won't come back anytime soon.